Good morning, Laurie.
Good morning.
Welcome to Halifax and the Bloom Institute. You've traveled all the way in from Hebb's Cross, Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
Yeah, how long have you been living in Hebb's Cross, Nova Scotia?
Actually, I'm living on the same property I was born, in the same location. Yeah. Well, I was technically born in Bridgewater, but I've lived at Hebb's Cross all my life, except for being away, like to university and periodically different places. But I live on the same property that my grandfather acquired back in about in the 1890s, actually. Yeah. So I know every foot of it.
Every foot and every plant.
Well.
And we want to hear about those plants, but first I'd like to introduce you to whoever's watching this. First off, this is Laurie Lacey. Laurie is one of our most beloved herbalists here in Nova Scotia, our herbal elder. And Laurie has been recognized as a herbal elder of Nova Scotia due to his many, many years of involvement in the herbal community and herbal work. And so I'm really happy that you're here to share a bit of your wisdom and some of your stories with us this morning.
It's wonderful to be here. Yeah.
So, as a herbal elder, this means that you've had a long lifetime of involvement with plants, as you said, starting off in the property where you grew up. And I'm wondering, now that it's spring in Nova Scotia, what plants are appearing on your property in this early May that you're excited to share a bit about?
Well, it's nice to see the new leaves coming out in the Labrador Tea, replacing some of the old ones that, of course, go through the winter. And things like trillium, too, with their beautiful painted trillium with its beautiful blossom. We'll soon have the gold thread blossoms coming up. Tiny little white flowers, I think 4 petals on them. Things like that, and partridge berry.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you make teas, or do you use any of these remedies personally?
Oh yeah, when I need them. But my main tradition that I've come through would be the Mi'kmaq tradition, and as far as plants go, and they had 2 different types of healers I've learned, in the sense herbal healers, plant healers. You had the one type of a healer who would go out and collect a lot of plant material and would prepare them, maybe dry the leaves and prepare them for the winter, because that person was well known in their community and would have a lot of clients come in during the winter months maybe, and would treat a lot of people. There was a second line of healers who believed that the only time you collected was when you needed to treat someone or to treat yourself, that collecting beforehand was to invite illness. You must expect a lot of illness because you're collecting all these plants. And so I've tended to go in that direction, and my main focus over the years, although I've helped a lot of people along the way and people have helped me, it's been more an educational purpose in my life, making people aware of the traditional medicines and so on and so forth.
Yes, yeah. The traditional and the local medicines. You had a storytelling session with us the other night, and you told some vivid tales of some of your experiences with plants and other plant people and some of your teachers.
Yeah.
And you emphasize always the local plants. And what are some of your favorites?
My favorite plants, yeah, wow. Yeah, that brings back a memory of I gave this one particular presentation, and it was, let me see, I think it happened in Halifax at one of the libraries. And I kept saying, I talked about mullein, and I said, it's one of my favorite plants. And then I'd talk a bit, and I say, another one of my favorite plants, and it was burdock. I say, a favorite plant of mine is gold thread. And then I'd say, a favorite plant is skunk cabbage. And then a girl pops up in front, wow, you have a lot of favorite plants. Yes. And I just realized, oh my goodness, I've said favorite plant at least 12 times,
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
You're opening up a kettle of worms.
I get it.
And I'm sure you've had the same experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed.
But now, Labrador Tea. I mean, I'm always very close to Labrador Tea. She's the grandmother, and always one of the first plants that I became very close with and learned a lot in native medicines was Labrador Tea, because it's such a strong medicine, and it's so well known in tradition, and it's a plant that practically always, well, I shouldn't say always, because kinnikinnick means smoking mixture, but I mean you can make different smoking mixtures, but in like standard kinnikinnick mixtures, so say one of the standard 6 plant mixtures, Labrador Tea was always there. Yeah, and so it's appeared so often. And I remember being out in the woods once and thinking about Labrador Tea, and I had my eyes closed, and it was like suddenly this old grandmother appeared in my vision and came up close to me and mentioned that I should be using balsam fir. And it was Grandmother Labrador Tea, And so we've always been close. And she plays games with you, though, the grandmother. She's kind of a trickster, because
like you.
yeah, because there are times when you want to go looking for Labrador Tea and she won't show herself. So she'll take you through the swamp, she'll get your feet wet, and finally she'll appear. And there's other times when she feels like appearing, and you walk right up to her. So you don't know what kind of trick or plan she's laid out for you. I mean, how much she's going to make you work to find her. But it's just an amazing, and the little fuzziness on the stem, and you turn the leaf over, and you have the incurled leaf, and then you have the fuzziness underneath. It's just an amazing plant. And I'm sure you've chewed the leaves.
Yes.
Yeah, this little spicy taste.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, sorry to get off on a ramble like that.
It's okay. Your rambles are always appreciated. And you mentioned smoking mixture, and you've shared in stories and with me that you've been intrigued by smoking mixtures, and that's been one of your pursuits as a herbalist. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the significance of the smoking mixtures?
Yeah. Of course, you have the smudging plants, right? Yes. And in a sense that I mean that as well, so. Yeah, it's always fascinated me, like just all the way plants are used, and the smudging, and the certain plants used to bind others together. So, like, you come up with a bunch of plant material that's very loose, and it's difficult to use it as a smudge or whatever. And you put something like everlasting in it, and you roll the everlasting, and presto, you can throw it up in the air and catch it. Because the everlasting is a binder, and it binds it all together, and you can catch it like a ball, and you can put that on if you want a little piece of incense or coal, and it'll slowly smoke its way, and so everlasting's good that way. And of course, the use of plants in ceremonies, like the pipe, sacred pipe, for example, Labrador Tea has a basic mixture to that, and bearberry. Of course, bearberry, if you look in herb books, it's sometimes given the name of kinnikinnick, which is in a sense a misnomer. I mean, it's not a mixture, right? But it's so frequently used so that it took on the name of kinnikinnick. And I just enjoy experimenting in that way. Yeah.
Yes. And bearberry is also used, in teas. I mean, that's the thing, the versatility of these plants. They can be smoked, they can be made into teas, used like topically.
Urinary tract medicine,
yes.
Parasites,
Yes.
Yeah.
You share stories of some of the less common plants, less commonly written about or even mentioned, and certainly even less common. Some of them we don't even see very often. You were speaking of skunk cabbage the other night, and it seems to be a rarity here in Nova Scotia. And you told some stories about that one. Could you share a little bit about skunk cabbage and some of your experience with it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Skunk cabbage again. Similar to Labrador Tea, is one of those special plants in traditional Mi'kmaq medicine, right? It's almost legendary, as is the Labrador Tea and plants like Jack in the Pulpit, legendary. And skunk cabbage is another one, powerful plant. Not something you want to mess with a lot in a green state. But I remember up in the Upper Ohio area of Shelburne County coming to this, and I think I mentioned this last night, this large swamp. And I looked in the swamp, and here was all this skunk cabbage. I mean, huge leaves, you had leaves like, whoa, and really deep green. Sometimes it's a lighter green, but deep green, and I could smell it I stopped my car, and I could smell it from the road. And there was a woman with me, and she had like some heart problems. And so, I go in, it was like skunk cabbage was calling me to come into the swamp, and it was in July. It was fairly dry in the swamp, so I could go in. And all this, being surrounded by all the skunk cabbage, and it's not the nicest smell, but you come to like it. You just appreciate its strength. And I sat down amongst all the skunk cabbage and the leaves up over my head, all around, and I could look around. There was nothing but skunk cabbage and this amazing smell. And I got the sense that it was a plant that wanted to help her, the woman with the heart problem. And that was the message she wanted to give me. I didn't mention that last night. But it was one of the messages skunk cabbage wanted to give me. Now, I don't know if the woman took me up on that and went to the skunk cabbage herself. I'm not sure, but it's so strong, and was used by the Mi'kmaq, for example, and other Aboriginal groups to help treat diabetes, help control diabetes, and basically the root. And you dry the root, because if you take it green, as you know, it's got this burning. Yes. It'll burn your lips. Basically, it's got this burning sensation like Jack in the Pulpit. Right. And you dry it, and you can steep it up then as a tea, and just take it as a tea for the diabetes, or used in some cases for migraine. Yes. Yeah, I don't feel like saying right now how it's used for migraine, because I don't want people going experimenting, and it's rather kind of a dangerous way of taking it, and I think, but yeah.
Yes, well, we'll leave that mystery for now. And, I think something you just mentioned, this woman, you're not sure if she followed up and went to that plant and spent that time with that plant. I mean, we learn by being with the plants, and I think I gather from all of your storytelling and sharing that you've learned a lot directly from the plants, that you spend a lot of time in the area surrounding your home and other natural places, and you learn with and from the plants directly. That's my sense, and that's what I hear from you. And I think a lot of we herbalists and people on the path enjoy being with the plants, and I'm wondering what you could say as guidance for any of us who are wanting to deepen our relationship with the plants. How would you guide us in doing that?
Yeah, well, two ways. One is more kind of an oddity, but the easy thing to do is to just go and, for example, I remember back in Medicine Walk came out in 1999. And I remember when I was doing that book, I wanted to produce a section on the spirituality of plants. I forget what I called the chapter. Spiritual nature of plants, the spirituality of plants anyway. But so I started going out, and for example, I went to, and we all love Mayflower, yes, and which is in bloom now. That's right. Everybody should be out smelling the Mayflowers. Yes. And I remember just thinking, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find a large Mayflower patch and sit in the middle of the Mayflower. And I remember finding it. I've got a spot on the old field we call a Mayflower corner. And I just went and I sit amongst the Mayflower. And I meditated amongst the Mayflower, and I could smell the perfume of it coming in. And I got this distinct impression, nerve tonic, for nerves. not a sedative really, but a calmer, calming the nerves. And it was communicating that it was a tonic for the nerves to me. And it started me on a process with other plants in the same way, so that I was able to get that chapter going, because I would go sit with the other plants. And sometimes I would sit down like with, we mentioned Labrador Tea, but say sweet fern.
Yes.
Yeah, we all love sweet fern. And sit there and I'd close my eyes and, I just close my eyes and I'd feel the sweet fern leaves, get the texture, good impression of the texture, and like feel around the aura of the sweet fern. And something like lambkill. I mean, with a very plentiful plant. You don't want to take lambkill as a tea, of course. Sure. But even like that plant which is slightly poisonous, or, and deadly poisonous for sheep, for example. Yes. Even something like that, I remember sitting with lambkill and doing that with like feeling it and the texture and feeling how it's different from Labrador Tea. Some people have even mistaken it for that Labrador Tea, but it doesn't have the fuzziness, of course. And getting the impression of this green auric. Woo! I was just covered with green everywhere. Yeah, it was green. I had my eyes closed, and I was totally in a green field. And it was giving its healing, saying that, I might have poisonous ramifications if I'm taking internally, but you don't need that. Right. I can help to heal you if you simply sit amongst me. Or pick one of my plants and and meditate with me. If you need a green healing type of energy, Right. And the other type, I mentioned the type of oddity, it wasn't the right word, but it's, I've come to kind of the distinct realization, and it might sound strange, that plants love to communicate through rock. Yeah. And the rock from riverbeds. The rock of a riverbed, yeah. And sometimes you go to a riverbed, you can do this to the Lahave River, and you find these like rocks like shaped like my finger. Yes. And very beautiful rocks. And I found that if you get like 4 of these rocks and you put them in your hand and you shake them like a rattle, that the plant spirits will come to you. If you do it in the right way, focused way. And so they like to come through rock. Yeah. It's a really interesting, intriguing method to think that you have all, like in some areas, you have all this bedrock running. And that the plants use the bedrock, to communicate. It's one of my many interests. Yeah. And and especially with, like I say, there's something very precious about a riverbed and the rocks in the riverbed. When the riverbed dries up, you go out and you get these rock, or whatever. Very magic. Let's just say, how many people have ever stepped on a rock in a riverbed? Not that many. And how it's just so special, to step where a few people have stepped, and to touch rock where a few people have touched. And it just, somehow it came to me that the relationship of plants and rock. So, again, I get off on a tangent, but so that's a very special, almost like a shamanic way of bringing in the plants. Yes. Yeah.
Well, and
but the easier way is just to sit amongst the plants. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good, and that's I think that's the best way to learn. Yeah. Huh. Well, I like that story of rocks and plants and all the elements, and just taking it all in and letting it. Yes. And the environment that the plants exist in. So we're at the perfect time of year now. Now that spring is here, it's beautiful to be outside, and there's just so many plants. So we're all encouraged to get out there. Hearing your story makes me want to get out and to walk the rivers and the river banks and see if I can find maybe the Jack in the Pulpit or some of these other plants that you're fond of and speak of. And so for the remainder of spring, we're halfway through. Do you anticipate any particular herbal activities or adventures to come in the coming weeks?
Well, probably be giving some plant walks. Okay. Yeah, and some from my home place. Okay. Yeah, and you don't mind me mentioning a website, do you?
Please. Yes. Mention that.
And anyway, if anybody wants to or is interested in going on a walk, and I've got a website. It's a very small mini website called it's www.medicine-maker.com. medicine-maker.com, and I list my plant walks on there. Yeah, from my home area especially, and of course on Facebook too. Sometimes, yeah. And I'll probably get into giving some walks, but occasionally I get the thought that we go through cycles. Kind of humans go through cycles, right? Some people say 7-year cycles. Some people say 12-year cycles, or some people just say, well, it's spontaneous when a new cycle begins and an old one ends. And sometimes I'm thinking maybe it's time to do some personal exploration and give up a lot of the public stuff for a bit. And just, I got so many things I want to do on a personal nature with plants. So but I think this summer, in spring and summer, I'll be giving some walks, quite a few, yeah. But it's in the back of my head, like, wow, I've got these personal, and then you're the same way, I know. Yeah, personal things I'd like to do, and sometimes when you plan plant walks, you with your herbal events, I'm sure my talk, like for the weeks prior, in a sense, once in a while it would come up, I got to do this, I got to contact this person, or with your herbal clinic. I'm sure, it's the same thing in a way. I'm sure you're thinking, gee whiz, maybe, I should occasionally take some time and just do some personal exploration. Well, it's the same thing. Yeah. You got walks planned for the future, and that's always in your mind, and it kind of takes away from your own personal focus. Okay. Yeah. But as an herbal elder, what I'm thinking of doing is having, say, half a day as an open house every 2 weeks, and people can just stop around, say maybe Wednesday afternoons, and I'll announce that on my website too, and not necessarily go on a plant walk, but just stop around and have a chat. Yes. Anybody, any new students or anybody wants to explore herbalism or plant medicine, whether it's Aboriginal or whatever, just come have a chat. Have a coffee or a tea or herbal tea or black tea.
And bring a pie.
Bring a pie. Yes. It should be blueberry, apple, or lemon.
And occasionally pumpkin, you've said.
Right.
So we'll repeat that. He likes blueberry, apple, lemon, and occasionally pumpkin.
It's a good coconut cream pie. That would be okay.
A good coconut cream pie. Okay. And Laurie knows good pie. So and
it'll be good.
Well, and I know good conversation, and I always have fantastic conversations with you. So the sound of you opening up, your home and yourself to sharing stories, and just as you say, those spontaneous conversations about plants. What a wonderful offering! I'll be down, and I'm sure people listening to this will be very excited to check out, your website, medicine-maker.com, and be looking for it on website on the Facebook, and we'll be eager to get down and have those chats with you with pie and tea. So
That's right.
I thank you for this chat. This was really sweet, and as always, it's a pleasure to see you and to chat about plants. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to see you always. And bloom.
Yes, it's bloom. It's that bloom time of year. Yes, and the Mayflowers. Let's all get out now and go find some of those Mayflowers and enjoy that meditation.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.